Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About, a program put together by Trinity United Church, Legon, to discuss issues that bother or things that happen to us day in, day out. And today we're talking about marriage by ordinance. That's why we have two lawyers in here, Kona Bonnie, and then my dear friend, very good friend, as well as you, Daniel Fiado, yes, to help us to the discussion. So you can get us on Facebook and YouTube. The link always, or the handle always, is Trinity United Church, Legon. You are very much welcome, Connor and Daniel.
Thank you.
Just as I mentioned, we're talking about marriage today, marriage by ordinance. If you can help, maybe I will start with Connie. What ordinance or marriage by ordinance is?
Marriage by ordinance is marriage under the Marriage Act, the Marriages Act, Act 1884 to 1985, called the CAP 127. And it specifies the various forms or certain things to do to get married under the ordinance. So it's just the law that regulates marriages in Ghana.
So 1884 to 1985.
85.
These are years in which these laws have seen some changes and all that. So it's encapsulated in the CAP 21.
CAP
127.
That's right, that's
yes.
correct.
And then maybe I can go to Nani now. So what are the things that are involved in there, in that CAP 127?
Okay, so the CAP 127 specifies three authorities under which you can contract marriage under the ordinance. Okay, you talk about the special license from the registrar, or you talk about registrar certificate, or you talk about marriage officer certificate. So these three authorities, if you want to marry under the ordinance, you must follow the stipulations of the law under these three authorities. The authority or marrying under the registrar's certificate, or marrying under the marriage officer certificate, or having a special license which allows you to have your marriage wherever you intend to have it. Okay.
Oh, okay. So with the last one that you mentioned, for instance, you can decide to have your wedding on a park.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a nice park just by the studio here.
Yeah.
Beautiful place. So we can have a license to have your marriage.
Exactly. You can have a license to have your marriage and, on the park or at the beach or a place of your choice.
Okay.
Okay, but you need to have a special license given to you by the registrar of marriages to be able to do that. Without that, that marriage will be invalid.
And then the other two ones, I need you to explain a little.
Okay, so the other two, the registrar certificate is when you want to have your marriage at the registrar's office or in a district court. Okay, it also spells out the procedure. You pick up a form, you fill the form with your name, whether you're a widow or a spinster, or you are a widower or a bachelor. You fill the form indicating your occupation, your age, and so on and so forth. And then the registrar will consider whether there are no legal impediments to the marriage and issue a certificate for you to go ahead and have your marriage after 21 days of this notice being published. Or they put the notice on a notice board for at least 21 days. Remember, you have about 3 months to be able to have your marriage after the issuing of the notice. Then when you come to the marriage officer certificate, that one is what we normally have in our churches. So the marriage officer could be a licensed religious leader or a pastor who has a license to officiate marriages. And the place should also be licensed before you can have the marriage there. In this case, you have to have a notice given to the marriage officer, who will then raise bands. The bands are raised on 3
The bands has to do with the announcement.
The announcement that you have in church,
Okay.
every Sunday. And every Sunday, normally you have 1 or 2 marriages being announced. That announcement will be done on 3 consecutive Sundays, okay, after which you can have your marriage. If you don't follow this procedure, then the marriage or the ordinance you are trying to have will be invalid.
Yes, and Kwana, with the announcements of the 3 consecutive announcements, and it's supposed to be 3 consecutive Sundays. So if it happened this Sunday, the next Sunday, and then the following Sunday. So within that time, what could happen?
Within that time, several things can happen.
Yeah,
For
tell
instance,
us some of them.
someone who intends to object to the celebration of that marriage can raise an objection. And for me, this is what I consider very important about objecting. Your objection to anybody's marriage should actually happen within the time frame when the bans are published.
Oh, okay.
Often, people show up on the day of the wedding to cause mayhem and do all kinds of stuff to disrupt the program. You could be in serious trouble when you do that.
So you are saying that is illegal?
Yes, it is. You could actually be physically put where you should be, or damages arising from your disruption of somebody's program like that, very important program, could be could make you bankrupt. So if you want to object to a marriage when bans are published, that is where you go to make your case right in writing. It's not just verbal. It has to be in writing to where the bans have been published, so that if it's a church, then the priest in charge would take a record of your objection. And then send it to the court for determination, so that if it is frivolous, the parties are cleared, the objection or the caveat is lifted, so that the ceremony can take place. Within that time too, people can decide to change their minds about the whole ceremony.
You mean the people supposed to be married?
Yes, it happens.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why I said any number of things can happen. But for me, the most important one is caveat,
okay,
which is an objection to the ceremony being held.
Okay. Yes. But Danny, why then would a pastor, during the ceremony, the marriage ceremony, come out to see if anybody has anything to say? Is that not in contravention with what Connor has just described to us?
Yes, definitely. We sometimes wonder why we need to ask again on the day of the celebration, because we've given ample time, we've given notices, we've raised bans for 3 weeks or for 21 days, and if anyone really has a just cause, the person should come forward and write it. And the law requires that you state the grounds upon which you are objecting or forbidding the marriage, okay? And the marriage officer has the mandate to also take this objection to the High Court for a justice of the High Court to determine. Now remember, if we get to the High Court and it comes out that the caveator or the caveatrix, the one coming out with the caveat, is at fault, the court will rule summarily and ask the person to pay cost or compensation. So you don't gain anything if you don't have a just cause. Okay, in any way, if you have a just cause, it will also be determined, okay, and compensation will be paid for the marriage to either continue or will be halted, or in any decision that the court will come to. Okay, that is the point. Even if your grounds is that the person is already married, one of the points that makes the ordinance valid is to be sure that the person you are marrying is not married to another person, okay, at the time of you are having your celebration. Okay, so if that person is already married to you and is coming to marry somebody else, that alone invalidates the marriage. Okay. So you don't need to come and cause chaos at the church to make a point. Okay.
So there's this one point that I want you to emphasize, that if you have any objection, there's a time limit within which you can do it, but not when the marriage ceremony is taking place. Is that very clear?
Yeah, that is clear. I mean, that is why I have a challenge generally about the churches still asking the same question. Because remember, at the time of raising the bans, they asked such questions as to if anyone has a just cause. Okay? So if you have a just cause, first Sunday, you have to bring it forth. Second Sunday, then third Sunday. And if you don't write anything, and on the day of the wedding, you come up orally saying I have a cause, I mean, again, you don't really have a ground to stand on.
Okay. Now, is there anything as Christian marriage? Because now we're talking about marriage by ordinance. Is there anything as Christian marriage? Maybe Connor.
Yes, I would simply say marriage in accordance with the Christian faith.
Okay.
I have you see, I hesitated a bit, and the reason for my hesitation is that these days there are all kinds of marriages being celebrated, which in some jurisdictions is Christian marriage, but over here we would have serious objections to.
They tell us about some of
them. Marriage between a man and a man. Marriage between a woman and a woman.
Oh, okay.
In certain jurisdictions,
right.
Yes, it's celebrated by the priest, and it's perfectly fine. It's regarded as Christian marriage. But in Ghana, it is not. So I would prefer to say marriage under the ordinance.
Okay.
Then that one I am comfortable because I can take the law, review the law, and make an advice on it or make a determination of the point. So,
which in this case, ordinance in this case, it will mean that one man, one woman.
Very well.
And then what other things? The ordinance.
Yes, one man, one woman. You are also, Danny.
So you have to, under the ordinance, there are certain points you need to look at. One man, one woman, you have to look at capacity.
Very well.
Okay, whether the person has capacity to marry. Okay, capacity is 1 point. And the second point, the person shouldn't have been married to another person who is not the one he's marrying at this time. So you realize that we have this situation where somebody marries under the customary law. Okay, so he has 2 wives. And then at the point he decides that, oh, this one, the second wife or the third wife is the most beautiful one. So he's going to the altar with that one. Okay, that alone invalidates the conversion from customary marriage to ordinance. Okay, so if you have a we have to establish that customary marriage is a marriage in its own right. And in its own right and status. Okay, marriage is a status. So ordinance is also marriage in its own right and status. So if you marry under custom and you want to convert it into ordinance, that is where the law stipulates what you need to do. You shouldn't be married to somebody else who is not the person you are marrying at that time. Okay, so you can marry a lady under custom and convert that customary marriage to ordinance marriage, the same person. Okay, so that's one of the grounds of validating your marriage. In addition to the bans and the notices that we talked about earlier on. Then we also will ask about capacity, whether the person is of age. Okay, the law, the Marriages Act indicates that when you are below 21 years, you need consent, okay, from parent or father. If your father is not alive, then you will look at your mother. If your mother is not alive, you may be a guardian, or even maybe a marriage officer, or maybe a registrar can give consent to the marriage. But if you look at the Children's Act too, the Children's Act also talked about the age of marriage to be 18. So when you are 21, you don't need parental consent. But if you are under 21, which will be between 18 and 21, you will need parental consent to get into marriage.
Now about the customary marriage. Once you get the customary marriage done, are you supposed to register it?
Yes. Actually, you may register, registration, there's a whole provision for registration of customary marriage. And it's, in times past, it used to even be mandatory. You must register. For now, those there have been changes recently. I think what is left now is still permissive. You may register, and it's to the party's advantage that the customary marriage is registered. It doesn't convert it
To the
into ordinance, no, because there are a series of steps that have to be made for the marriage to become ordinance. But at least registration also makes things a bit certain, so it is becomes a common and public knowledge, like this person is married to this person. That is a certain.
But Danny, the customary marriage is a whole marriage in itself.
Yes, that's what we said earlier on. The customary marriage is a whole marriage in itself. Therefore, if you marry under custom or you marry under the ordinance, they are all equal. Sometimes we tend to think that the ordinance is above the customary marriage. But the truth of the matter is the law regulating customary marriage is different from the law regulating ordinance. And you have the liberty to convert your customary marriage if you feel that it's not substantial enough to convert it to ordinance. But to do that, you must strictly follow the law under the ordinance to make it valid, as I keep saying. Because if you miss out in the conversion, for instance, you have a situation where somebody married under custom. They decide that, okay, now we've been married, we have kids, we want to have a wedding, a blessing in a church. So he goes to any church, maybe a small church, in a classroom, you have a young pastor, then they do the blessing, eat and have drink, and everybody is happy. That is a blessing, not ordinance.
I see.
Okay, that is a blessing, not ordinance. The ordinance, we have already stated the conditions or the law you need to follow to be able to make your ordinance a valid one. So here in this scenario, you realize that the classroom perhaps is not licensed place for marriage.
Neither the officiating minister.
Neither the officiating minister. So even these 2 points invalidate that marriage as an ordinance marriage. The issue is if you are able to successfully convert your customary marriage to ordinance, the customary marriage extinguishes.
I see.
Doesn't exist anymore. Now is the ordinance marriage you are running with. That's what holds. Now, if even the ordinance marriage, if you dissolve the ordinance marriage, you don't come back to the customary marriage because it doesn't exist anymore. Okay, but if you are unable to convert successfully the customary marriage to ordinance, what it means is that you still have the customary marriage because it hasn't been successfully converted. Okay, that's it.
Connor. Okay, you continue from
yes,
there.
my learned friend made reference to something earlier regarding people in maybe the man in a polygamous marriage taking one of the women to the altar to do the ordinance marriage. What that does is that from the point on which the marriage, the ordinance marriage is celebrated, the man becomes a bigamist.
What is that?
That is, if you are married to different women, if you are married to someone under the ordinance and you take another wife, then you fall in foul of
bigamy.
Of the law. You are a bigamist.
But in this case, he's going to be married to only one that he has selected.
But that is the problem. And the reason why I am bringing this up is that it's during maybe in terms of inheritance, maybe the man passes away and the properties are being distributed and things like that. A lot or the best part of the estates tend to go to the women who were married under the ordinance. And so those who find themselves in relationships like that, they should know that that situation is wrong and that they can actually challenge that kind of marriage. You can actually not only even in the lifetime of the man. At the time that the man is passed away and the properties are being distributed, and you are being given the shorter end of the stick, so to speak. You can actually object, and if your objection is successful, it will be, I mean, on the par, or whatever is for all the women. You also get a fairer share in terms of that. So this is to say that the men who do that and think that they've gotten away with it could actually have consequences when you are long gone. And
I see.
Yes.
So, Danny, it's customary marriage prerequisite for ordinance, because in the church you would hear the man of the father of the woman being asked, "Now, why you be and have you done everything?" Assuming that it's about something that was done in the customary marriage. Is that a prerequisite for
in the law? Customary marriage is not a prerequisite to ordinance.
Okay.
However, because the Christian community and churches align with the one man, one woman concept under the ordinance, we see the Christian marriage as an ordinance. However, the church has made it a kind of regulation or a formality, convention sort of, that they want to be sure that the family is involved in the marriage. In Europe and other places, two people can just walk to the registrar and have marriage, and get married and have their marriage signed. Okay, but in Ghana, you realize that marriage is about families too. So the church wants to incorporate the family into that marriage. Okay, so that is why mostly it has become a convention where they will ask whether you've done the customary marriage first and so on. But you realize that you are doing your customary marriage on Thursday and you are converting it to ordinance on Saturday. Okay.
All right.
And we've already established that both marriages are more or less equal. None is superior to the other. But as my brother, senior colleague is saying, said, the issue is that when it comes to inheritance, sometimes if you are under custom, you realize that when a man dies, the customary successor, based on their tradition or clan, the customary successor is the one who takes charge, and the women are put aside. We don't really acknowledge them much. But when it comes to the ordinance, you realize that the law had made a lot of provision in favor of the woman or the spouse and the children. So that is why it's important that people want to convert their marriages from customary marriage to ordinance. And also, customary marriage is potentially polygamous.
That is, the man can take more than one wife.
It can take more than one wife, and you cannot do anything about it because the law allows it. Okay, but ordinance, as it said earlier on, if you take on or you have one more before the one you are marrying, it's invalidated. And if you take on one after having the ordinance, you fall short. You fall short of the law. So that is the reason why I think. But customary marriage is not a prerequisite
for ordinance.
For ordinance.
Okay. Now we'll take a short break and then we'll come back and then we'll continue from there. When we come back, Connor, just remind me that I have a question for you. Wow. Yes. So we'll be back before.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
Love divine, oh love.
or the link, as always, is Trinity United Church, Legon. Thank you very much for staying on with us. And we have had to bring in one woman, Mrs. Joyce Chumesiedu, because we realize that we are all men talking about marriage, which is between a man and a woman for our purposes. So we'll be asking later on Joyce, Mrs. Joyce Chumesiedu, what she thinks about what we the men have been talking about so far, particularly concerning women. But I promise that, Connor, I'll be asking you a question. Now, my question is, sometimes we do not find out, those going into the marriage, whether the place that we are going to be married is registered and all that. But particularly, there are some of the churches that will give you a certain kind of certificate, which may not be the right certificate. So I want you to explain a little for us.
Just like you prepare for other life's adventures, it's important to prepare for marriage too. And by that, you find out, for instance, whether the minister who is going to celebrate your marriage is licensed. Because it's not just anyone who can. And then also whether the premises that your marriage is going to be celebrated is licensed. If those things are not done, your marriage, your ordinance marriage is no ordinance marriage. So there is a special certificate that is issued when the marriage is celebrated. Usually it's given to the women. And that certificate is designed solely for the purpose of proving, it has certain details on it. The age of the celebrants, their professions, the people with some of the witnesses who came to witness the marriage, and they actually attest on this, the certificate to show that they have actually attended that marriage. And it's very important because if that certificate, if the person who celebrated the marriage is not qualified, and then the certificate you are also holding is not the prescribed one, then whatever you are holding is just a mere paper. I've seen one before in my practice. The woman brought the document and asked whether, said this is the marriage certificate she was given. I felt sorry for her. But fortunately, what she wanted didn't really need a certificate, so we're able to assist. But if you are someone who has high hopes on the document you are holding, you really want to find out where you are going, the people who are going to do the ceremony are properly qualified to do it. I give credit to the established churches. Trinity United Church is one. They tend to have structures in place where they can do some of these things readily. Because it's not just even the issue. It's issued for a certain period of time. So it expires.
I see.
Both the officer's license and the premises, it expires. They have to be renewed. So some it would have been issued, but they file it and then they forget about it. And then they continue celebrating marriages, and then one day somebody, there's an inheritance issue, a big matter, and then you find out that the person who celebrated your marriage was not qualified. Everything that was built on it comes crumbling down. So it is good to find out, particularly if you are going to get married in a church which is not so well established. It's not one of those old churches that is properly administered and things like that. Yes.
So the church, a particular church can print its own certificate? and give to you, and you, if you do not know, you might think that's the correct one.
Yes.
But which is the correct one? Where does it come from?
The Registrar General.
Okay.
They have custody of all this, and they tend to issue it to the various either the churches and also the marriages that take place in the assemblies, so that you have to exhaust all that, then you go for fresh one, and then they keep the old ones for record purposes. They never destroy them because it could come out one day, somebody will need it. So as I said, it's prescribed, and they, unfortunately, I didn't bring but most, if you are married, you would have seen it properly under the ordinance. They are either green or blue.
Okay.
Either green or light blue.
Now let me come to you, Mrs. Joyce Chumasiud. We talked about an issue where people raise objections. Most of the time it's the women. Whilst the ceremony, the marriage ceremony is taking place, they will come and raise an objection. The lawyers, Connor and Danny, have told us that that's not the time to do it. There is a time allotted for you to do a written objection. You know, have you come across any such thing? And with this new light that's being shed on the issue, what's your opinion?
I've seen one. She came to the church premise and started making noise before the ceremony. And so she had to be whisked to the vestry for her to be interrogated. Why do you think that this marriage shouldn't come on? She had all sorts of reasons. But after the pastor had listened to her, they deduced that no, she didn't have a case and she didn't have the right to annul the marriage. It wasn't in her domain to do likewise. So they advised her on what to do, but they thought that her story didn't hold water. So the ceremony went on, but there was a considerable delay because they needed to sort the issue out before, because it creates a lot of embarrassment for both the bride and the groom. So you wouldn't want to mess somebody's day up. So they needed to take their time, listen to the woman, and sort it out before they went ahead to officiate their marriage.
Thank you very much. We want to encourage you to send your comments or questions on our social media channels. You can also send a WhatsApp message on 0501 579 996. Again, 0501 579 996. And the lawyers are here. The non-lawyer, Mrs. Joyce Chumasiud, is also here. She can share her opinion on some of the things that you drop in to us. Now, let me come back to you, Danny. Danny, when we're talking about the marriage ceremony itself, some of the things that happen during the day, in the chapel, or whether the licensed premises, or whatever, do you think that the people who were involved in the marriage itself were properly, prepared for some of the things that they went in for? Did they? Have you come across such people who would ask questions as to what to do if I don't want to have it in a church, if I want to have it in a playground?
As we discussed earlier on, often we don't ask questions. So, and even if we ask questions, we don't ask the right questions and we don't ask the right people. So you end up with some information that is not accurate. So you have people still going ahead with the wrong information, and doesn't end well most often. But to add to what Auntie Joyce said, the destruction of the marriage, again, there are so many ways to have your day in court if you think you have been wronged. Okay, there's some aspect of the law which we call the breach of promise to marry.
Breach of promise to marry.
Breach of promise to marry. So if you have a relationship with somebody prior to the person marrying, and you feel that the person had made substantial promise or led you on to extend that you believe you are going to get married to that person, and he's marrying somebody else, you can still pursue that option of suing the person on a breach of promise to marry, which we hardly do. Okay, so we think, oh, I'm going to show him pepper, as we always say.
I'm going to pepper him.
And then we'll get to the premises and make noise and so on. But as we said earlier on, if this matter is taken on to the High Court, the justice of the High Court will determine the matter, and you will be made to pay cost or compensation. Okay, so I think we still need to have enough information to decide which way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Kona, what are the legal requirements? Maybe I'm not putting it right. Now, during the marriage by ordinance, what are the basic things to do? We see a whole crowd, you know, the people, you know, the honking of the car and all that. Are there supposed to be the essential things to be done? What are the most essential things to, you know, get the marriage by ordinance done?
During the marriage itself, during the
Yes.
celebration itself. Very well. Aside the previous preparatory things that we said, on the day itself, it's important to note that the ceremony has to be done between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
It's very well. That is what the law says.
Okay.
It is stated categorically in the law, and quite frankly, a number of things that are said and done in the ceremony are in the law. Just that it's been done in so many times over so many years, so we tend to lose sight of it. The requirement, as I said, for the minister being licensed, it is one of the requirements that it's very important to observe. Then premises, then
Witnesses?
witnesses.
Mm-hmm. How many?
Witnesses. Oh, usually on the certificate, you have 2 each for each of the celebrants. 2 each for each of the celebrants. Usually, it could be a parent or guardian or whoever but there has to be witnesses.
Okay.
If that is not done, in fact, even from the look on the face of the certificate, you see that something is missing. There's a column missing. And it's important to fill every part of it. Otherwise, your document will be lacking in capacity.
So there should be the officiating minister.
Officiating
Number
minister.
one, the basic things.
Yes.
And then the witnesses who attest to the fact
To
that
the
the marriage has,
marriage.
you know, taken place properly.
Yes.
And then, so sometimes the things that we hear, you know, driving in, you know, honkings and the whole crowd. Do we need all that?
Those ones are
They are part of the celebration.
to spice it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, otherwise, you know, someone said that of birth, marriage, and death, the only one you are conscious of is marriage. So if it's the only one you can actually remember, you did. You don't, you know, spice it up a bit with those things. You tend to maybe quickly forget about some of these things. But it's not a legal requirement.
Okay.
It is not. And some churches these days, after the celebration of the customary marriage at home, they just get the couple and their witnesses to go to the church and then sign the
Maybe the church, the
certificate.
pastor's office.
Yes.
Okay.
To sign the certificate. One, it reduces the financial burden on the couple, and particularly if it's a problem, and then it makes the ceremony also simpler.
Okay.
Yes, but the rest is just the show.
This is just Chumesi. Now it's the cult of the women. It's you who would call for, you know, crowd, and then you keep telling yourself it's my day, you know. So, but what do you think about that? Now that we know the bare necessities, which sometimes could be blown up, what's your opinion?
Okay. So my opinion is, if you can afford it, it's fine. Mm-hmm. It's your day. Truly it is. Because it sort of crowns your glory. So it is your day. If you can afford it, it's fine. However, people are borrowing to be able to have a wedding, okay? And it's a big setback for the young men who are not able to afford such pomp and pageantry. There's life after wedding. Okay, it is now that you need the money now even more than before, because you are starting a journey. This journey would start including other people, because you'd have children if you are blessed to have them, and children are expensive. So you need the money even more after the wedding than before the wedding. If you can, some have very supportive families. A family will say, I'll take all your reception. Another would say, I'll take all the cost of your dressing. Another would say, so you don't compare yourself to others, because you don't know their source of financing. If you have a family that can afford, there are some couples, they didn't even spend 1 cedi on their own, or their own wedding. And you are admiring it, and you are coveting it, and you want your wedding to be like that. Meanwhile, you don't have any support base. Okay, so you borrow to take your pictures. Now they do pre-wedding shoots. They do pre-wedding shoots. So when the announcements are done at church, they project the pictures of the pre-wedding shoots. It's nice. It's pleasant to the eyes. But can you afford it? If you want that, can you use your phone to take such a picture so that it can be projected? Must it be a professional who is going to charge you so much for you to be able to have your pre-wedding shoot? And then doing the dressing up, they would go and have a hotel. Okay. There are some parents who take pride in the fact that my daughter is leaving the home. And this is my house, no matter how humble it is. This is the house where my daughter is leaving from. So I would want to hand over my daughter from my own home. When you take it to a hotel, you are depriving your father of such a blessing, such a pride, such a time of honor. Some parents would complain, but the children will say, hey, it's my day. And you are a cake. This is the contemporary way. But in as much as we want to follow the times, the era in which we find ourselves, we should also know that the ceremony itself, much as it's your day, it's also an honor for the entire family. And everybody wants to have a piece of that honor. So they would hire a hotel. The man and his groomsmen are in one room. The woman and her bridesmaids, sometimes they import gowns, one counts, and it's written bride. It's nice. It's nice. I mean, when you look at the pictures later on, it's nice. But it's a matter of affordability. I don't think that you should borrow to have your wedding.
So you should work within your means.
Work within your means. Right. You can have a very simple and nice wedding. It does not have to have all those frills. And even the frills, you can be innovative about it to have the frills but minus the cost, or at very minimal costs.
Joyce, there's a question for you. I'll read the question. You answer after I have put a question to lawyer Danny. The question is coming from Kofi. He says, for the lady on the panel, kindly ask the only lady on the panel for me. Why would a woman choose ordinance over a traditional marriage? So please think about the answer whilst I talk with Danny. Danny, what does the law say about the way we dress regarding the marriage ceremony day?
Well,
is there a particular way? No,
the law is not specific on dressing. As a matter of fact, the essential validity for ordinance is, we have stated it, that the parties must have capacity to marry. We say that none of the parties should have been married to any other person than the one is marrying. We stated that there must be notice for you to raise bonds, or notice at the registrar's office or the notice board. These are the essential validities. The dressing, the decorations, the cars. These days I also see cameras and drones flying in the church, and it's, as Auntie Joyce said, it's all beautiful. But if you want ordinance, and you can actually have it in the most simplest way, by following only the requirements of the law and just wear your kaftan or African wear and have your wedding. Exchange your vows and rings, and you are gone. And as a matter of fact, I think some years back, most churches started doing mass wedding. But it's not a matter of just bringing so many people together and having a wedding. It's a matter of following the requirements of the law. That all these people have given notice to the marriage officer, bans have been raised for each and every one, and dates have been set. There are no caveats to these marriages, and they have capacity to marry. Okay.
And on the day of the wedding, must be witnesses, two from each side.
Witnesses on the day of the wedding,
Okay.
from two from each side.
Okay.
Okay, so you can even have church elders or one or two friends, and you have your ordinance, and it's valid. Compared to having a beautiful 500 people present and not following the law and having the marriage invalidated. Okay, that is not the right thing to do. The best thing is to rather follow the law, and as we are saying, cut down on cost, and then have your valid marriage. Otherwise, you can stay with your customary marriage too, which I said is also very valid under the law. But because it is potentially polygamous, the church aligns with the ordinance, which is monogamous marriage.
That is one man.
One man, one woman. Yeah, as I said earlier on, the definition of marriage, Psalm 1886, thereof was a union of a man and a woman for life at the exclusion of all others. So that a voluntary union of a man and a woman for life at the exclusion of all others. So you must give your consent. Voluntarily decide to get married. You shouldn't be forced into it. The relationship is for life. The relationship is between one man and one woman. As a matter of fact, in our laws, the marriage should be between a biological male and biological female.
Okay.
Okay, you know where I'm going to.
I know.
I don't want to go there. So, biological male, biological female, one man, one woman, for life, at the exclusion of all others, nobody else. That's what makes it monogamous. So you cannot add on to that marriage. Yeah.
And you said for life, and that's the
For
reason why it is said. I mean, you hear the pronouncement,
Yeah.
until death do us
death,
part.
yes.
Okay.
But again, the law makes provision if there is any reason why this marriage should be dissolved. It's only the court that can dissolve the marriage.
Right.
Okay. Unlike the customary marriage, where every custom has its own tradition or ways of dissolving customary marriage, for ordinance, only the court has the right to dissolve the marriage. And you must prove that the marriage has broken down beyond reconciliation. If you can't prove that, most often parties are encouraged to reconcile, and the church does a good work in reconciling people.
Thank you very much. Now, Joyce, you have to answer that question. Why would some women choose traditional marriage over the ordinance?
Okay. So just as Lawyer Fiado said, we find safety in the certificate. The ordinance would give you a certificate, and in the ordinance there's one man, one wife, at the exclusion of all others.
Okay.
We want that exclusivity. And so when you marry under the ordinance, it sort of gives you some comfort that it would be difficult for your husband to go in for another woman. That's what gives, so the certificate is your comfort.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I would want to go in for.
I guess I tackled that question correctly from the way Kofi wrote it the other time. Well, anyway, now there's a question by Fia Abrahams. He said it's just been answered by Dan.
Yes.
I see Christian marriage, whether customary or ordinance, as one in which the two parties, husband and wife, that is male and female, are committed to God and bring their marriage under God's control, guidance, and blessing. Lawyers, is that correct? I think we should go to Conor. Yes, we should go to you.
Again, I am being careful in how to answer that, but largely, I agree with the ingredients that she shared. Yeah, the ingredients that she shared. Of course, if you are marrying under Christian marriage and you are in Ghana, let me be careful. In Ghana, then you want to be careful of what things ingredients you import, but largely what she has said, I agree with them. One man, a male, female, husband, wife, and yes, that is
committed to God.
Yeah, committed to God. Of course, those are things you would expect in a Christian setting. So I have no difficulty in saying that. Yes, I would take if you mention these ingredients, I will grant it to you that yes, you are describing a Christian marriage. But if you add other things, if you expand Christian marriage too much, you have other things which you don't want.
Okay. Yes. We encourage you to send in your comments or questions to our social media channels, or you can send us a WhatsApp message on 0501 579 996. Please just take note of the WhatsApp phone number 0501 579996. There is a question by Ruth Reid, lawyer. Which of the lawyers? Anyway, we can put two of them. Why is it that your marriage, no, not the lawyer's marriage, is not recognized unless, okay, why is it that once married, let's put it this way, it's not recognized unless you have gazetted it before it would be recognized? I think we'll go to, yeah, okay, Connor.
There is no a gazette notification for the marriage itself. It's my learned friend specified or raised the series of steps, things that have to be done. Or maybe I should rather explain what is gazette. I may offer more help that way. Yes, a gazette is a government booklet in which various notices are published. So for instance, if you pick up the Gazette, various laws that are being passed, you find it in them. If somebody is changing his or her name, you find those details in the Gazette, date of birth, even the designation of a marriage center, like Trinity as a marriage center. It is published in the Gazette. So it's you don't find the notice of marriage itself or the publication of bans in the Gazette. No. So I think there is a problem about what a Gazette is, not necessarily the recognition. The recognition of it, yes.
So what?
I think,
yes.
I think that well, we gazette the marriage because we want it to go into the annals of the government and get into the database of government that I am married. So the certificate, we got it from AMA, the assemblies, right? Okay. And then the church has signed and all that. We have the certificate. Now we'll go further and gazette it. It must be in the books of Ghana, in the books of the country. I think that's, I don't know who made us think so, but we sort of think that when you gazette it, then you sort of seal the thing.
But
I don't know how right that is.
The marriage certificate.
That is what I was going to add.
Certificate, normally what you sign, there is a duplicate copy.
Yes.
Okay. So, and at the end of the month, the registrar will submit all the duplicates to the central unit or point. So there's always a reference point. If you have an issue or concern about a particular certificate, you can do a search, and then you find whether this person was validly married, and so on, or had the right certificate.
I think that in the Gazette, you don't even gazette the marriage, you gazette your change of name.
Exactly. So maybe
so we would change from our maiden names to our
That is why I said
names.
earlier that it's a primary confusion about what a gazette is, not a recognition.
Yes.
So you don't gazette the marriage.
It's the change of name.
But again, as you said, you publish those things. Well, if you have the money you want to publish, it's fine. But that is not what makes your marriage valid.
Okay. Danny, is it legal for the women to be given the marriage certificates? Usually that's what I see.
Well, there is no legal requirement
It's
that I know
either
of,
be
but
given
it
to
is
the man or
because
the
the women are able to keep stuff well. They are able to protect what is close to their heart, and marriage is very close to their heart. Not to say the men don't value marriages, but the women value it and they want to protect it mostly. So we give the certificate to the woman, keep it well, and the man could misplace the certificate.
Anyway.
So
I'll be
you
the,
don't
I'll be
even
the
have
lawyer.
a
I'll be
date.
the lawyer for men here.
Okay.
Actually, I think that the reason the certificate is given to the women is because they have to prove the change
Exactly.
their status.
Yeah.
I am still Mr. Kwanaboni,
Okay.
but my wife is now Mrs. Genevieve Vosaboni. So that is what I think. Because
Yes.
if wherever I pass, if they ask what's my name, Kwanaboni, that is it. But if she wants to show that she's married to somebody, so so where is your certificate? Then, so, but you are not being fair to us when you say.
That's the truth.
It's
But-
actually
and this is not
demanded.
in law.
It's demanded
This,
when
what
you-
you said might be the reason, but it's not in
Yeah.
law.
Okay.
That it has to be given to the woman because she needs to prove that her name has changed. In any case, we already talked about the name being changed and gazetted. So you don't need additional proof that you are married. And that is why we also have witnesses. So the witnesses, their role is that you are telling the whole world that now you are a couple, you are married. Yes. And everybody now knows that you are not Miss Sewa or what, but now you are Mrs.
Mrs. So or
So and so, yeah.
Yes,
Usually you have documents prior
To-
to your marriage that bore your maiden name.
Yes.
And if you have to change, for instance, if you have to change your name at the bank, you need a supporting document. And the supporting document you can only use, it's either your marriage certificate or if you have gazetted, then the gazette, the page, copy of the page where your gazetted name is. So for us, it is used as supporting documents a number of times. Why this person is the same person we are talking about. That's what you'd use to prove.
Okay, there is a question coming up from Ife Abrahams. Is it a must for a woman to take up her husband's surname when married under the ordinance? Lawyers.
it's not a legal requirement.
Okay.
It's not at all. My mother, for instance, throughout marriage, remained Frida Pedepo or Frida Boni.
Okay.
Often, if you go asking for Mrs. Boni, unless somebody remembers that that is the person, you won't find that person. So it's not a legal requirement, but people, yes, people want to either acknowledge that fact. I have come across a situation in my practice where even the man insisted that the wife should change her name
To
even
his name.
before the child comes out.
Wow.
Yes, I've seen a number of weird things in my practice. So to some people, they are very important. To some, it doesn't mean anything. But it's not a legal requirement.
Okay.
It's not.
But Joyce, sometimes you see the women, they will add their maiden name to their husband's names. And that also is not in the
No,
legal.
but my thought is that when they remarry, the two shall become one.
Okay.
Okay, so the man and the woman are now one.
Okay.
And, you take the same name. Yeah, but I haven't, we live in a society that is more of a male-dominated society. I haven't seen a man taking up a woman's name.
It's the other
I
way
know somebody
around.
was going to ask why are the men not taking up the woman's surname. But I believe the two shall be one. That concept, and it's become a convention for a very long time, and I don't think you and I will want to change that. As a matter of fact, some women are also happy to have their names changed to Mrs. So and so. It's something that gives them
a lot
pride.
of pride.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Joyce,
usually at the church, as soon as you are married, people start addressing you
as Mrs.
as Mrs. This. And then in your other life, you still bear your maiden. So sometimes it looks like one person with two different identities. So somebody who has always known you at church knows you with your marital name and is looking for you at the workplace and is using your marital name, and there's nobody like that. So just for ease of, just not to stress anybody out, if you change your name, but as the lawyer said, it's not, you don't have to. But in fact, it's nice to be Mrs. So and so.
That's why we brought you in.
That's the part I like.
Now, this guy is a lawyer. Kwekwata Krajumo. He says, in terms of the Gazette, what happens if the officer who officiates the marriage isn't gazetted in the marriage license register? Does it affect the validity of the marriage?
It does.
It does.
It does. It means that the officer is not licensed to perform the marriage.
Okay.
And among one of the few things I would want to emphasize on this forum is the license of the priest or whoever is celebrating the marriage is so important.
The premises?
The premises. And you want to be inquisitive in asking such questions. If you ask the question and they get offended, then that tells you it should sound a warning to you. Are you licensed? If it's there, you just produce it. We move on. It's better than going ahead and years later, when rights have been acquired through that marriage, then somebody wakes up and scatters everything. It will be, worse than just making the inquiry.
Danny, you made a very slight allusion to the dissolution of the marriage. And you mentioned that it could only be done in a certain context. I've forgotten exactly what you said. That you can't just, you are the one.
I indicated that because marriage is a creature of statute, the law creates marriage. It is only the law that can break it. That is why we're saying that the ordinance, you cannot just wake up tomorrow and say you are dissolving it. You must go to court. And the court will determine whether the marriage has broken down beyond reconciliation before the award of dissolution will be given, or the decree of dissolution will be given unto you. That is what I think I said.
Thank you very much. Because I heard of the case where the woman says, oh, in Pennyview, I don't like the man again, and went to the pastor who officiated the wedding. The Guawariano Mami, dissolve it. That's not right.
No, that's not right. Okay. Because the pastor doesn't have the mandate in law to dissolve marriages. Okay. The right place to go is to go to court. And it's only the judge that has the right to dissolve the marriage based on the facts that will be presented to the judge. Okay. And at least going to the pastor, I would say is good, because the pastor will then reconcile the parties, okay, and try to come out with some innovative ways and get other people to talk to them. Even if you go to court, the court is mandated by law to ask you to go back and try reconciliation. Okay, so it is, you will try reconciliation on several occasions till you can prove that the marriage, there's nothing you can do about it before the judge will be satisfied to grant that request.
Yes, okay, I know the
David,
amount.
David,
Okay,
yeah.
which is exactly what the pastor did.
Yeah.
You know, he said, I don't find any cause for this marriage to be dissolved. So I'll talk to you further. Anyway, this is from Nana Oyenete. With regards to gazetting, I think it's because women change their names after marriage. In case you are going to renew your passport and it has your maiden name, you'll be asked to gazette your name, which is what Joy said.
Yes.
But in that case, what they are gazetting is a change of name, not the marriage. The change of name.
And you did explain to us what the gazette means,
Yes.
so that we not got confused about
It's
its
just
usage.
a government document, all kinds of information.
Joyce, okay, we about just wrapping up, all right? But I think that as a wife, a mother, and a woman, there are some things that you have come to learn very well regarding marriage in itself, the ceremony. And today we're talking about the ceremony. And I would want you to just hinge on a few points, maybe 1 or 2 points that we need to look at before we go into the marriage itself as women.
There are lots of things we have to look out for, but top of my head quickly, you need to remember that when you are married, you are not marrying just the individual. You are marrying his family as well. So in the olden times, you tell your parents, they will take their time, investigate, and go into the family to see, do they have any peculiar ailment in the family? I mean, they look at all sorts of things. Now, we meet each other, say, in school, at work, we want to get married, and we don't have time for the elders to look into the families. It is critical that you take your time. If you marry this person, it's till death do you part. So, God willing, you are going to spend the rest of your life with that person, and it could be long years with that person. But you need to get it right from the beginning. Take your time. We have been dealing with premarital counseling. It's critical that you submit yourself and subject yourself to the counseling sessions. There are a lot of issues that are discussed during counseling that ordinarily it wouldn't even cross your mind. But it comes up during the counseling sessions and it makes you know the person better. There are couples who break up whilst the counseling sessions are going on, because then they realize that no, I can't live with this person with this particular issue. I don't want to commit a lifetime to this particular issue. When you miss the counseling sessions, you may go in on a wrong foot. At least go in as an informed person. So you know how the man wants to treat his finances. You know how communication is going to be like. You know his idea about childbearing, parenting, so that in as much as surprises would come up, some of the surprises would come up during the counseling sessions, and so it doesn't become a huge surprise afterwards and you're like, oh God, what have I let myself into? Okay, so take your time, go through the counseling session, and whilst the counseling is going on, there's marriage after the wedding. A lot of times the ladies are so fixated on the ceremony. So even when you are taking them through the counseling, you've asked the question, they are answering, and then the lady would ask you, so what do you think? Do you think I should use wine and white for my colors? Or, Auntie Joyce, what do you think about having 8 bridesmaids?
Wow.
Okay. And during such times, I'm like, lady, this is not the time for that. We'll discuss that afterwards. But let's take our time, go through the counseling sessions. Exercises are given. If you're counseled at Trinity, we give exercises, homework. Take your time and go through all that and get groomed before you enter. Of course, nobody is God. So nobody can tell you that this could happen. But there are some red flags that are so obvious. So obvious that, look, this is a big red flag. Take your time and make sure that you understand what you are going in for before you go in. Young men, young women get into marriage and they realize that, oh, this is what came up during counseling session. But I was thinking about the wedding. I was obsessed with the wedding and my head was in the clouds and I really wanted to get married because all my mates are married. Take your time. This is a lifelong journey. Take your time. That's all I can say. Take your time, take your time, take your time, and go through the rudiments of it and enter with your eyes open.
Joyce, you're a good lawyers, I think that I need to ask you to really emphasize some of the legal things that we need to look at before we get into marriage.
Yeah. So, as we said from the beginning, if you want to have an ordinance marriage, you can have it under the registrar's certificate, you can have it under the marriage officer's certificate, or you can have a special license. Okay, these are the authorities under which you can have your ordinance. And you have to make sure that, one, the person has capacity, or the parties have capacity. The capacity means right age, or is not married to another person than the one he's marrying. The place of marriage is licensed. The premises, the pastor is, or officiating minister is also licensed. and so on and so forth. Okay, all this must be established. It's not the how beautiful the wedding is. That's not what makes it valid. It is this essential requirement. That's what makes the marriage valid. And as we said earlier on, you can have your customary marriage and then convert to ordinance. Okay, though it's not a prerequisite, it's become a convention. So it's always better to have that together with your ordinance, have the customary marriage converted to ordinance. And if you want to convert it, remember the conversion has to be done right. Otherwise, you only have your customary marriage. The ordinance hasn't been done yet. Yeah. And the rights and privileges under the ordinance will not avail to you if you didn't do the conversion right. Yeah.
Connor?
Well, I just have a little advice beyond the discussions we've done. If you have issues in marriage and you are intent on saving your marriage, then the right person to see is your pastor. If you go and see a lawyer, then it's because you have a different, if you are taking a different route, probably out. So we are in a certain forum. This is a church forum. So if such issues crop up, then you go to the pastor's place. It's resolved. Then you. But if you start with the lawyers, because the lawyers, what we like to do or what we know to do is confrontations. So once we come in, then a different. That's in addition to the capacity my learned friend has spoken about. It's so important. The premises you are getting married to, very important. The officiating minister being licensed, very important. As for those ones, I can't just emphasize them enough. It has to be all the time because I've seen it before. I mean, I've seen it. It's happened to people and they found out too late. Too late.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fiado, our lawyer, and just another lawyer, Connor. Joyce coming in. Although you came in late, you've been so much resourceful.
Very much.
We do appreciate it very much. This has been Let's Talk About, a platform put together by Trinity United Church. We'll be here, God willing, next Wednesday. Do have a lovely night. Bye.